Isn't Don great? Oh, wow, it's a live mic. Don, you are hilarious. Were you a stand-up comedian ever? Okay, so I love being in the parades at Fulshear and just seeing what Don's going to have on his Segway. So that's pretty good. You know,
New pants are coming.
The new pants are coming.
Yeah,
okay, I appreciate it for the Christmas parade.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good deal. Well, I've had a lot of fun this morning sitting here listening. I ran a Chamber of Commerce way back when in another life, and I was listening to the different members and the networking that's going on. Actually, we're going to have a conversation after this, and I was listening to the new venues coming up in the Fulshear area, and this is what a chamber does. And so all of us, I'm a member of the Fulshear Chamber. I'm a member of many, many chambers across the 21 counties, but I have to tell y'all that when I left Fort Worth, I was born and raised in Brenham, and I went off to school at TCU, and I was in athletic administration when I graduated, and then when I was leaving to come back, I got the job at the Washington County Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Foundation. They were combined. And the guy that was the CEO of the Tandy Corporation at the time, Radio Shack, he met with me, and he did not want me to leave TCU. And they made several offers. I was like, no, Jimmy and I are going back home, and he's going to run his dad's business. We're going to buy him out, and that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to run the Chamber of Commerce. And so he said to me, he said, well, what's your vision? And we talked about that, and he said, now, Lois, let me tell you something, what a chamber does. He said, if a Chamber of Commerce were like to evaporate today, he said in about a week's time, a bunch of businessmen and women would get together over coffee, and they would say, you know, we need a place that's a clearinghouse for us. It's kind of a voice for all of us. And he said, and they would form another Chamber of Commerce. So thank you for what this chamber has done. The last time I met with them, we could meet in a phone booth. And so now it's exploding. Don, how many members? 400 and?
21.
That is incredible. And it's just going to keep getting bigger. So congratulations. Thank the staff, but most importantly, every chamber needs volunteers. So clap for yourself, and I'm thank you. Mayor, great to see you this morning. You get elected and you jump straight into, as Don said, into a fire, but it was really a flood. During that time, it was very difficult for all of us. And I will say, from the parts of the county that I was in at that time, we had 5 deaths in Washington County alone. To put that in perspective, the city of Houston during the tax day floods, they only had 4 deaths from 4 million people. We had 5 deaths in Washington County in that 3-day period. And so it was very, very difficult, much sadness. All of that water flowed into the Brazos River and then on downward. And it was historic for all of us. Never had I seen rain like that. I had actually been in Victoria, and Cheryl Tiemann, who's traveling with me today, and she runs the district office out of Brenham. Everybody say hello to Cheryl. Larissa, of course, handles Fort Bend, Wharton, and Waller counties for us, and we appreciate, and a part of Harris County, we appreciate Larissa. Cheryl called us as we were down in Victoria, Mayor, and said, she called my chief of staff who was traveling with me that day and said, it's black here in Brenham, black. And I mean, this was like at 1 o'clock or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And Chris was like, Cheryl, I think you're overreacting. What do you mean? No, it's like it's 8 o'clock at night. I've never seen it like this. And so she was like, I think y'all better get back home or you're not going to get here. And as we drove through Round Top, our phones were going off like crazy, and we stopped. I said, hold on here a second. We looked, and there was just this bank of clouds, and I'm 51 and have been from, I'm 5th generation Texan and grew up in that area. And we took a bunch of back roads to get back home because Jimmy, my husband, was in Colorado, and my kids were alone, and our kids were alone. And anyway, we barely got into town. I've never seen anything like that. And Mayor, just, you know, you knew it was coming, and I appreciate everything that y'all did with leadership, not losing. I know we lost livestock, there were a lot of sad stories, but there are stories of heroism, and that's what makes us special, and I think extremely special here in Texas. So I'm going to get into that. I'm not going to give y'all everything I want to say, because in December y'all are going to come back and I can just share the stage with my friend and colleague John Zerwas in the house, and we're going to give y'all some great kind of look into what we think is going to happen in the Texas legislative session. I want to recognize Linda, who is Atkins, who's with us today, who works with John Zerwas. Not for, because all of our staff works with us. And I just appreciate what y'all do in being our counterpart in the House. Couldn't have a better friend in the House of Representatives. Lorianne Beelan won a prize, but she's also Andy Myers' great assistant and works with Andy and Lorianne. I thank y'all for what you do in working with Commissioner Myers. He does a lot and is probably my most active commissioner. If you put it in perspective, 21 counties. I have a lot of county commissioners that I deal with, but there isn't a week that goes by that I don't communicate with him. So I want to talk today a little bit about what's been going on in the interim, and then kind of give you a perspective from my standpoint of being in the Senate and how we operate a little bit. And then John and I will hit a lot on the previews. But if you look at Senate District 18, you could fit 3 East Coast states in it. Literally, it's that big geographically. So in the last 2 days, I'm going to just give y'all a feel. Went to Rockport and opened up a district office in Rockport. Went to Refugio and spoke at the Farm Bureau that night. Came back to Victoria, spent the night, gave a 7:30 a.m. conversation to their economic development group, about 200 people. And then went to Hallettsville, talked to retired teachers, had lunch with the sheriff of Lavaca County. Then we traveled back through Victoria, made one stop, went on to Goliad, visited the mission, the state park, which has the mission in Goliad, and then went to the Presidio, which is actually run by the Catholic Diocese. And, as a part of the Texas history, I've been there, been through it, but I wanted to go and really talk to the curators and get a taste of that. And then spoke to the Republican women, the Spirit of Goliad Republican women last night in Goliad. They did have some good food, I will say that. It was a covered dish, and I ate a lot, including a piece of pecan pie. And got back to Brenham last night a little before 11 and was here this morning at 8. And so we travel those roads a lot. And Fort Bend County is a lot like the rest of Senate District 18 in so many ways, and not like the rest of Senate District 18 in so many ways. Fulshear is very similar to many communities that we've seen through, that you would see in Senate District 18, but Fulshear is changing and will be, CJ, changing very rapidly. It has changed with MUDs and different things that have huge housing developments. And so it's a dynamic part of Fort Bend County. Obviously Richmond, Rosenberg, very established. Old Katy, I heard somebody stand up and say they were from Katy. You're not going to believe this. This is how small our world is. But one of the lead interpreters at the mission in Goliad is a young man named Jared, and Jared was born and raised in Katy and graduated from Katy High School. He was a Katy Tiger. So we had a great conversation about that. So we're all connected in many ways. It's a big area. I represent more of the coastline than any other state senator in the state of Texas. So we watch those hurricanes a lot. I'm on 9 committees right now. I started out with 5 from the Lieutenant Governor. Those 5 committees are important and impact your lives in huge ways. Senate Finance, Public Education, Vice Chair of Health and Human Services. I'm on Transportation, and I'm also on Agriculture and Water Resources. Since then, the Lieutenant Governor has appointed me to 4 more committees if I didn't have enough to do. And most of those deal with the coast. There's a Port Committee, but when I say most of them deal with the coast, the Port Committee, we're looking at things like 36A and the possibility of moving goods from Freeport also Corpus Christi, a lot of dynamic things going on with the Panama Canal widening. I'm on a coastal barriers committee that's looking at, can we do something when those hurricanes come in to protect those ports and the huge investments that we have, the largest being the Port of Houston. And then I'm on maybe my favorite, I chair the cruise line committee that is looking at bringing in a cruise line somewhere between Calhoun County and Brownsville in the lower part of, I know we have Galveston. Cheryl just got back from vacation. She sailed out of Galveston, but to serve the lower part of Texas, maybe pull into San Antonio and that area, could we get a cruise line to be at one of the ports down there? And then finally just named to a committee that looks at the flows of the river, Mayor, the different rivers, the inflows into our bays and estuaries, and the importance of making sure that as Texas grows and our big river authorities use a lot of that water for the urban centers, that we also though know that there are the flows going down the river to keep those rivers alive and our bays and estuaries, and the impact that it has on our fisheries, which impact our economy in a whole different way. So lots of things going on in Texas. National politics, you can't turn on the radio without hearing it. I like to listen to Christian radio to get my mind off of it. So we are watching that. Does it impact Texas? Yes, it does. One of the things that Texas has been very interested in is looking at, we're a little like this, is saying, you know, the federal government, if you will kind of, instead of always telling us what to do with our own money, let us do with our own money, we'll do a pretty good job with it. And I have pushed in the Bush administration, the Obama administration, I will push in this next administration for more of trying to let government happen more on a local level. That's when you get the best solutions. I can promise you, every time you get better solutions when your government is closer to the people. I know that we just talked emergency center, the Center for Medicaid and Medicare controls so much of our healthcare dollars. They're way up in Washington, D.C., and they're controlled by appointed, unelected, longtime bureaucrats. And if we're ever going to innovate in healthcare, and when I say really innovate, what's going to break our country is the cost of healthcare. It really is. We used to worry about Social Security. Y'all remember that? Oh my gosh, Social Security. That's just, nobody even thinks about that anymore. It's the cost of healthcare dollars. And so hopefully we are going to have a new president, as Don said, and we're all watching that. But as we go into the next session, we have a lot to think about. The interim is designed to study. In Texas, we only meet every other year for 140 days. We start on the second Tuesday of January, usually sometime around my daughter's birthday. And we go for 140 days, and that includes Saturdays and Sundays. You count those days. We don't always meet on those days, but many times we do. It's intense. It is very intense. Some of you come up for different days. I think Fulshear has had a day. Obviously, Fort Bend has a day, but you also come up on issues that are important to you, and that matters to us. We do a pretty good job of going through the emails, the phone calls. We enter those in. Cheryl's in charge of that. She enters those into what we call constituent management systems, and we try to track the thoughts and the thought processes. After I leave here today, I'm meeting with constituents for the rest of the day in the Katy office here, and taking input and assimilate. You assimilate all those ideas, and then you go into session. So in the interim, all of these committees have been working pretty hard. We're going to be coming out with interim reports. Most of those reports will be due out before we have our big meeting again here in Fulshear, or actually at Safari, Texas. And I'll be able to talk to you all about what we see in those interim reports. Well, how do you get interim reports? People like you come and testify at hearings. In public education recently, I had a number of constituents that came up and testified on issues. I'm working with school board members right now on governance issues with our trustees. That's been something I just, KVISD school board member talked to me about. He said, do you ever meet with just school board members? Or do you? And I said, well, I usually talk to the superintendents. He goes, why don't you try talking to the school board members? I thought it was a great idea. I do talk to them, but never as a group. So we've had a couple of meetings where we brought just school board members into the room without superintendents, and focusing on governance issues. Those trustees are our voice to the administration of schools. And who really runs the schools? In statute right now, surely. I mean, the trustees don't have a whole lot of what we would say power or oversight. And so I'm interested in that. I'm very interested in that when it comes to public schools. A couple other things that I want to touch on. Texas, if we were a country, would have right now the 12th largest economy in the world. Puts us at about the size of, we ebb and flow, but I like to say somewhere in the vicinity of France. It's pretty big, isn't it? Pretty big deal. Texas, I believe, has the most dynamic economy of any state in the union. And in part, what we've been able to do through these years is we're a low tax, low service state. That's just what we are. And I deal a lot with our constituents who sometimes want us to spend more money in certain categories, and those are investments with your tax dollars. But right now we have major expansions and major companies always looking at Texas, all over Texas. I went up to North Texas a couple of weeks ago. I was in Fort Worth for a couple of days, and then Dallas. And I can't tell you how explosive it is up there, just as explosive as it is down here, even with the price of a barrel of oil going down. Much of Senate District 18 and those counties that I named, you could talk about Goliad, DeWitt County, they were strong in the Eagle Ford Shale, lots of drilling. We're not seeing nearly as much drilling. We are seeing a little bit of drilling, and we're seeing an uptick right now. But even with that, even though oil and gas is the #1 industry in the state of Texas, we're still doing a great job. Exxon is getting ready to make a major announcement. Might be in Senate District 18. It's either going to be in Victoria or Corpus Christi. Louisiana was still in the mix. I think the floods probably harmed that, but this is a major expansion by Exxon. And if it is in Corpus Christi, and I have part of Nueces County in the district, but it won't be on Mustang Island, it will be good for everyone down in that part of the country. So those are the things that we're doing, and I think that we have the business environment that brings those major manufacturers and companies into Texas, and then we all grow around that. CJ, I know you're here and you just came back from TML. There is a lot of talk about property taxes. That is a form of taxation that we have in Texas. It's how we pay for a goodly portion of our local government and your county and your cities, and it also pays for more right now than 50% of how we fund schools. In the Fulshear area, I have heard from hundreds, we may be nearing 1,000 now, of phone calls, emails, and letters passionately talking about appraisals and the appraisal process and taxes, property taxes. I hear you. So the Senate has a select committee on property taxes and appraisal review. Now, CJ, and I know I'm dealing with, and Commissioner Myers, and I'm dealing with all the locally elected officials, but I'm also dealing with the constituents. And I went to the last hearing. I'm not on that committee, but I went and I sat in Houston. It was supposed to be here in Fort Bend County, and we got bumped at University of Houston, Sugar Land, because of some nursing something or another. So we had it at Houston Community College. This was about 10 days ago, 12 days ago, I think. Linda, you were there and sat through the entire hearing. It was about a 6-8 hour hearing. Larissa was there. Mike Schofield was there. Representative Zerwas was there, along with the Senate, many senators there. Joan Huffman. And one of the things that just disheartened me slightly was the appraisal process. Mayor, I know y'all don't have anything to do with that, but one gentleman, this is a Harris County issue, literally got arrested when he went to protest his taxes. And it wasn't that he was screaming or anything, it was just what he made a statement. A security guard not only arrested him, but handcuffed him. And he had to sit in a holding room for a couple of hours. And then the Houston PD got there, and the Houston PD questioned him and looks at the security guard. You should look like that. She's sitting here going, huh? Is this America? And finally they go, you have no reason to detain this gentleman. He did nothing wrong. I still believe that the First Amendment gives you freedom of speech. And we heard story after story after story about that. I mean, like, I have a saying, sometimes you can't make this stuff up, and you couldn't. I mean, really, I would sit there and go, what happened to you? And Paul Bentoncourt did have the two chief appraisers, from one from Fort Bend County and the other from Harris County, and made them sit through the entire hearing. And at many times when there was a dispute, he would say, see that guy right there? Y'all, right now, go over to the corner and have a conversation. I mean, we're trying to solve the problem. You will see legislation on the appraisal process. I hope that the House agrees with us that this is something that's spinning out of control. You need to have a voice, and when you bring in comps and say, this is not right, I mean, that's appraised at this, and this is appraised at that, help me with this. There should be some help there in common sense. We learned some things about maybe training is not proper for the appraisal review board. There have been some ugly stories about blacklists and things. We're gonna work through that, and it's gonna get better. I kind of said civility is a good thing, people skill is a good thing, and maybe understanding the appraisal process would be another good thing to add to that. So we'll look at that. I know there is talk about how we allow cities and counties to look at their revenues. I'm not sure what's going to happen on that. I'm not committing either way about what I'm going to do on that. I have not seen the report, and I haven't seen the legislation. But I will say, in a small county that I represent, I was talking to the county judge, and they had lost $250 million of valuations on their tax rolls because of oil and gas. It was really, the price of oil goes down, so do your valuations. And what was so fascinating to me was, he said, I got out a chart, and he said, we really had not grown in the last 10 years. I did a 10-year snapshot. He was a pretty new judge. And he said, so I did all these charts, and I showed that our population has grown very little, but we have grown in employees in the county, we have grown in expenditures. He said, so here's our population, and here's our employment growth in the county, government employees, and our expenditures went like this. And he said, can anyone justify that? Can anyone justify that? And they're literally against the cap. They're taxing 80 cents per 100. So they had to cut out several million out of their budget, and he started with letting go 18 employees. And so some of those common sense approaches by local leaders are certainly welcome. Lastly, mental health. I want to hit on two last things: mental health and child protective services. How many of you read something about that in the newspaper? There's a lot going on. Child protective services. We're under a special master right now from the federal government, and there's going to be recommendations, but I also think that we've worked on it for a long time. What we've never done is completely funded that program. We have wonderful, and I do mean wonderful, caseworkers out there, but they're overworked. I mean, they have huge caseloads. We don't pay them a lot. It's a high burnout job because it's high stress. It's extremely high stress. So we're looking to revamp that system and to work on the turnover rates that we see with those employees. And we also need more foster homes. In some of the counties that I represent, we have 0 foster homes, 0 foster parents. Now, any of you CASA volunteers out here? CASA volunteers are fabulous. And so as we look to move forward, we're going to have to, just like Mayor, you saw so many volunteers come to the aid. We're in a crisis mode a little bit with CPS, and we're going to have volunteers to come to the aid, as well as, you know, the state agency getting better. And then finally, mental health. We have some challenges there. And the state has crumbling facilities in some of our state hospitals. We're going to ask, you know, we're going to try to invest some of those dollars with state taxpayer dollars. But I think, too, on the local level, there's some solutions. We're doing better on the local level. I know in Victoria, they're going to come out with a 7-county proposal about how they attack the problem more in the lower part of my district. Fort Bend County does a really good job of trying to stay on top of that. Lorianne, y'all are involved in so many different things, but you know, things that you know, aside from mental health, but human trafficking, which has been a huge issue, look for us too. And I will be carrying some bills to further the efforts. There's a high-profile case that we have in Fort Bend County right now with a father who is really, you know, going to the media and saying, we have an issue. And that's what it takes a lot of times, is to bring it to the forefront so that we recognize those issues and get rid of it. With that, lots more to talk about when I'm with Representative Zerwas in December. I'll take any questions and then I'll let y'all go. I hope I haven't bored you to death. But no questions? There's got to be some question. No? Okay, I'll let y'all go. I want to say this. Thank you for what you do. And small business is the heartbeat and the pulse of America. And without it, you think about the countless jobs and services and everything that we do. Together we will continue to work on this and try to get government out of your way so you can flourish. Thank you.
Lucky to have you. From our chamber, we could hear her talk all day long, so I didn't want to ever cut her off. So thank you so much.